Would you go out on a date with my niece? When my director Kevin said that, I stopped the hand that was bringing a sandwich to my mouth. I'm sorry for the sudden request, but I'll make it worth your while. Just name it. Today was a rare occasion. The director had invited me to eat lunch with him in the park next to our small manufacturing plant at work. I had a feeling he wanted to talk about something, but I never imagined it would be a date invitation. And he was even offering a reward. Honestly, I couldn't quite grasp what he meant and found myself asking again without thinking. A date, you say? The idea of a date was foreign to me, a guy who hasn't had much to do with women for over 30 years. And the person in question was a relative of my workplace director, which was an odd situation to say the least. Why on earth would you ask me to do something like that? Well, you see, you don't have a brother or cousin who looks just like you, do you? No, I don't have anyone like that. It's just that I showed my niece a picture of you and she said you were her first love. Remember that photo from when the union members went camping? I cooked up some great camp food, and I showed her the photo from then. You were in that picture, right? That's when she blushed and said, "That's the guy I first fell for," and now she says she wants to meet you. I couldn't believe it. I had no idea who it could be from my past. But what's with this convenient story that sounds like a drama? I'm just as surprised as you are. The director gave a wry smile in response to my words. My name's Michael. I'm 33 years old. I'm just an unremarkable, single guy who's never been much of a hit with the ladies, working as a rank-and-file employee at a small-town manufacturing factory. For some reason, the other day, I was picked to be the date for my director's niece. And let me tell you about this girl. She's drop-dead gorgeous. I let out a big sigh as I stared at her picture on my cell phone. Her name's Emily. She's apparently a college student turning 20 this year. To think that I could go on a date with such a pretty girl. And to be invited by her. Oh, how lucky I am. So, you'll meet with her, right? Yeah, of course. I stuffed a sandwich into my mouth with gusto. From that day on, every day was thrilling, and I couldn't wait for the date. When was the last time I had a date with a girl? Oh, but I've got to be careful. She's the niece of my director, the department head. If she reports back that I was all googly-eyed just because she asked me out, I'll be in deep trouble. Thinking about all this, I tried to calm my racing heart as I headed to the station to meet her. There he is. You're Michael, right? Huh? I was taken aback by the sudden sweet voice. In that moment, I found myself face to face with a woman I didn't recognize. Not good. Our lips were too close, and I found myself becoming conscious of her. You're Emily, right? I straightened up and tried to appear calm as I spoke. Yes, that's right. I'm looking forward to today. She smiled at me with joy. She's definitely cute. I was captivated by her smile, as warm as a spot in the sun. Michael, let's start by going to a cafe. Oh, okay. Snapping back to reality, I decided to ask something that had been on my mind for a while. By the way, I heard from the director that we've met before, right? Was it during elementary school, or maybe in middle school? Even looking at her face, I couldn't remember meeting her in the past. Then Emily said with an embarrassed laugh, "Well, I told my uncle you were my first love, but actually, I just thought you were my type after seeing a picture of you. I heard from my uncle you weren't married, so I thought I'd like to meet you." As she said that, she blushed, looking into my eyes, and smiled warmly again. I couldn't look away from her smile. And so, my date with Emily began. But that day, I was completely at her mercy the entire time. "Here you go. Have some ice cream. Open wide, please." "I can eat by myself, you know." I managed a nervous laugh and told her that, to which she puffed her cheeks and said, "Oh, come on. Today is our date, right? You could at least indulge me that much." "Really? Oh, okay. Got it. I gave in and ate the ice cream she offered. But man, this is embarrassing. Then she gently stroked my cheek with her finger. Whoa, what? You had a bit of ice cream on your cheek. Hey, don't startle me like that. Why not? We're lovers for the day, aren't we? She scooped some vanilla ice cream with her spoon and took a bite herself. Delicious. You can't beat vanilla ice cream. I was surprised by how forward she was, considering we had just met that day. Is this what all young folks are like nowadays? Lovers for a day. Her words gave me a bit of a pang in my heart. After eating at the cafe, we went to see a movie at her request. I hardly ever watch movies, so I was really taken with the sweet romance story. Sharing a large bucket of popcorn between us also made me feel thrilling. Time with the lovely Emily flew by, and I was sad that this fun time was going to end just after one day. Hey, if it's not too much trouble, I'd like to see you again. Then she just looked down, saying nothing. What? Did Emily feel something was off after dating me? Of course, that would make sense. If there's more than a decade age difference, it wouldn't be strange to have a generation gap in many areas. She would probably feel some discomfort too. While I was lost in thought, she dropped a bombshell. I might disappear soon. What do you mean? I asked, bewildered. She then looked down and slowly started to speak. I'm sick. I have a heart condition I was born with. I might not be around much longer. I could only widen my eyes in shock at her words. She then told me what was happening to her. I've had this heart condition since I was born, and the doctors said I need a transplant to live a longer life. There's talk about going abroad for the surgery. It's terrifying. As she said this, tears welled up in her eyes. Apparently, she had been dealing with this heart condition since she was young and was told by doctors that she needed an organ transplant. Even though a transplant should give her a chance at a healthy life, she seemed afraid and hesitant about it. Surgery isn't always 100% successful, you know. That thought alone is terrifying. Tears began to spill from her eyes. I gently took her hand in mine. It's gonna be okay. You'll find a great doctor who'll take good care of you. You'll get better and come back to us. I looked straight into her eyes as I reassured her. This feels like old times. What do you mean, like old times? I asked, puzzled. You probably don't remember, do you? The little girl you comforted in the hospital. Hearing this, I frantically searched my memories for a clue. Wait a minute. I had a hunch based on what she said. It was an incident from decades ago. My mom was ill and hospitalized, and I used to visit the hospital daily. My mom's room was a large shared room, and every time I visited, there was a little girl from the pediatric ward who would come to see my mom. She was a bit of a handful, sneaking in to see my mom without the nurses knowing. Convincing her to go back was my job. Are you, Emmy? I couldn't help but raise my voice. You finally remembered. I was waiting until you did. She laughed shyly. But you know, when we reunited, I felt a tad lonely. After all, you didn't remember me at all. Well, I'd never guessed the director's niece was that little Emmy. Meeting you here of all places. All my memories came flooding back, recalling the old times. When I would sneak out of my room to go see your mom, you would call me Emmy and escort me back to my room. I'm going to admit now, I did it on purpose to get some attention from you. Is that right? Yeah, because no one would play old maid with me. She smiled sadly and gently lowered her gaze. Back when she was hospitalized, she couldn't get along with the other kids in the pediatric ward and was often alone. She must have felt lonely. She often snuck out of her room, giving the nurses a hard time, the little mischief maker. My mother, well, she always had a soft spot for her. You always cared for me too, playing with me along with your mom, but when she was discharged, you stopped coming to the hospital, which left me feeling really lonely. I didn't even ask for your contact information. So, when my uncle showed me your picture, I was shocked. You did a good job recognizing me. Well, you haven't changed a bit. Impressed by her sharp memory, I couldn't help but chuckle. So, that little girl had been thinking of me all this time. I'm still going back and forth between the hospital and home. The doctors say the number of visits would decrease if I get the transplant. Don't worry, you'll be fine. I spoke to her with gentle assurance. She looked up, surprised, with tears welling up in her eyes, turning them towards me. I was so anxious, thinking, what if the surgery doesn't go well? I desperately wanted to see you, Michael, so I asked my uncle to bear with me and asked you to come along today. I took her hand and squeezed it firmly, conveying a certain message. Tears quickly overflowed from her eyes. Is that okay with you? Yes, please do. At my words, she wiped away her tears and responded. Emily came home crying yesterday. I was really worried about her. The next day, I talked to my director about the date during our lunch break. Was she still crying? Yeah, she cried all the way home and had a rough night. Turns out, the director had been like a father to Emily. I'm sorry for taking up a whole day of your time when you were so busy. By the way, what would you like as a thank you? To the director, I replied. For the date, I'd like to ask for Emily herself. Please let me have her. That's what I had told her. That once the surgery was successfully over, we would officially start dating. After the transplant surgery is done, I'd like to date her with marriage in mind. Emily was so happy she cried all night. She couldn't believe she'd get to marry her long-admired Michael, and she said she wants to live a long life, for your sake too. Is that so? I'm glad. It was the first time I'd ever seen Emily cry tears of joy like that. I hoped my confession would give her even a little bit of support as she faced her surgery with fear. I truly believed that from the bottom of my heart. Some time later, Emily went abroad to undergo a transplant surgery. And thankfully, the surgery was a success. Now, I spend my days enjoying the email exchanges with Emily, who's in the hospital. Recently, I've been feeling so well. I wish I could fly right back there. Whoa there, flying is definitely out of the question. Come on, I'm feeling great and I just can't wait to see you soon. I feel the same way, Emily. With every email we exchanged, I felt our connection grow stronger. I couldn't wait for Emily to come back. I wanted to hold her in my arms again soon. And then, a few months after her trip, Emily safely returned to the States. I'm home, Michael. Welcome back, Emily. I smiled gently and held my dear girl close. Thump, thump. Her new heart was beating strongly. That's the sound of Emily being alive. My beloved is alive and well. Emily, there's something I want to give you. This. Let's get married. Yes. Emily smiled through her tears and said yes. And on her finger, I placed an engagement ring. She came back to life, for me. Now, it's my turn to live to the fullest for her. I vowed that in my heart. On my way back from law school, I saw businessmen buzzing at the station platform. Despite their visible fatigue, they seemed to be brimming with a sense of fulfillment. Just a few years ago, I was in their shoes, but now I'm a struggling student, continuously battling the bar exam. Feeling out of place, I hurried away. My name is James, I'm 30. I used to be a corporate guy at a major company. Originally I was a law student, but I failed the bar exam multiple times during college. Realizing that it was too hard to keep trying after the college, I reluctantly gave up and found a job. At first, I thought being an office worker wasn't so bad, but the days were somewhat unsatisfying. By my 6th year at the work, I had become competent and was entrusted with more responsible tasks. Being relied upon made me feel more responsible, and I became more motivated at work. I also got married to my college girlfriend. My wife Caroline became a doctor after much effort, and she's truly too good for someone like me. Life was fulfilling both personally and professionally. Or so it should have been. A year into our marriage, I began to feel that same sense of emptiness again. Though my relationship with Caroline was great and there were no problems, I couldn't understand this feeling of void. Every day, getting on the packed train, lining up with people dressed the same, heading to the office with the same look on my face, it all just starts to feel so empty. I couldn't quite place this feeling myself, and I let it slip to Caroline during dinner. It's obvious, isn't it? While saying that, Caroline gave me a look as if to say, "What are you talking about now? You haven't fully given up your dream." I stopped eating and looked at my wife. "It's just that your current job doesn't satisfy you. It's too different from what you really wanted. Think about it. Have you ever laughed after work?" Hearing that made me reflect on my usual self and remember the past. My dream, that was, like my dad. Back in my student days, I was all about chasing dreams. My dad often came home late while I was sleeping, especially after a long day at work, but I vividly remember the joy on his face when he had a successful day in court. It was a happiness that seemed to spill over to anyone who saw his smile. Even as a kid, I realized that helping people must be a truly joyful thing. I wanted to save those in trouble. I wanted to be a lawyer like my dad. The reason was simple, but to me, who grew up watching my dad, it was a profession of admiration. I had shared this aspiration with Caroline back when we were students. She remembered that. Her words struck a chord. Yes, I hadn't completely given up on the dream of becoming a lawyer. And then I made a big decision. Of course, it was an important matter, so I discussed it with Caroline. "I'll support you as much as I can, so why don't you give it another shot?" With Caroline's encouragement, I took the plunge and quit my job to chase my dream of becoming a lawyer. I've been buried in my studies ever since. We're mostly getting by on Caroline's salary. Feeling guilty, I started tutoring to at least earn enough to cover the law school fee. I'm trying my best to be in a position to support Caroline soon, but it's not that simple. Truth is, I've already failed the bar exam 3 times. I'm ashamed of being so dependent on Caroline, and I'm desperate to change our situation, but no matter how much I struggle, I can't seem to find a way out. I was reaching my mental limits. One day, I somehow managed to get out of bed to go to the law school. They say 3rd time's the charm, but failing the bar exam for the 3rd time really took a toll on me, both mentally and physically. Honestly, my motivation to study was waning. Caroline was on the night shift today, so I started making the breakfast just for myself. Bacon and eggs, salad, and toast. As I wolfed down my food, I was reading the news on my phone when suddenly the ringtone blared. Who could it be this early in the morning? When I checked the name, it was from Paul, a mutual friend and classmate of both me and my wife. I had a bad feeling about this. "Hey, is that you, James? Long time no see. How you been?" The conversation started with the usual pleasantries, but I sensed something off in the tone of his voice. "I'm all right, just a bit tired," I replied with a fake smile. Then Paul, seeming a bit rushed, said, "I hate to bring this up at a time like this. I just happened to see it. Don't get mad, but I saw Caroline, your wife, going into a hotel with another man." I felt a strange sensation, like a chill ran to the core of my body. I guess it's true then. It felt like all the dots of suspicion I had were connected. It was because I had been feeling distrustful of Caroline's recent behavior. The way she keeps her cell phone all the time. The fact that she had her night shift doubled in the past few months. The way her makeup and clothes had become more flamboyant. Even when I asked Caroline about it, she would just gently deny it with a smile, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there might be another man. That's how I was feeling. I grabbed some clothes that were lying around, that changed quickly, and dashed to the hotel where Paul told me he saw her. "James, over here. This is the place," Paul whispered to me, almost like a detective on the case. As I hid in the shadow of the bushes with him, there was Caroline, who was supposed to be off from her night shift, leaning on the man with a spoiled look on her face, coming out of the hotel. I felt a rush of blood to my head but couldn't help staring intently at the man. That face I had seen somewhere before. It was one of Caroline's colleagues. I remember he surely has a family of his own, so this was clearly an affair on both parts. I burst out of the bushes, and, "Good morning, Caroline. What in the world is this all about?" At first, she was startled by my sudden appearance, but then the look in her eyes changed. "It's nothing. You see it all for yourself. Do you even realize what you're doing?" "I know exactly what I'm doing. I've reached my limit with our life together. How many times have I thought this is it? Don't preach to me when you can't even bring home the bacon." Caroline didn't flinch at my question. If anything, she was defiant. Seeing her like this, I finally got it. I couldn't drag this out any longer. Our marriage was beyond repair, thoroughly shattered. After that, I proposed divorce to Caroline, and she agreed readily. Thanks to Paul catching her in the act and my bit of legal knowledge, I managed to get her tidy sum in damages from Caroline and her lover. As for me, I quit my tutoring gig and poured all the settlement money into living expenses to hit the bucks hard. No time to wallow. I think I was more driven by the urge to prove myself. I had backed myself into a corner with no way out. Free from the need to work, I holed up in the law school study rooms day after day. That's where I kept running into this woman, probably another student struggling like me. She had quit her job too, to attend this school, she said. Her name was Emily, and she told me this year was her last shot at the bar exam. We were both in the same dire straits, encouraging each other while we studied. After a relentless study regime, I passed the exam with flying colors. Emily passed that same year too. We hugged each other, crying with joy. Since neither of us had anyone to celebrate our passing with, I invited her to dinner and said let's celebrate together. She gladly accepted, saying, "I'd love to." Honestly, it wasn't just about wanting to celebrate. It hadn't been long since my divorce, and after all, I had been going to the law school just to study. Normally, you'd think it would be inappropriate to feel this way. But as we studied for the exam together, encouraging and pushing each other, I couldn't help developing feelings for her. I even thought to myself, what am I doing? But I couldn't lie about my feelings. Once I no longer go to the law school, I knew I'd barely have a chance to see Emily again. I didn't want to have any regrets, so on the way back from dinner, I told her how I felt. Of course, I was upfront about being divorced and the reasons behind it. She listened silently, but after I finished, "Thank you, actually, I felt the same. I thought it would be inappropriate to have these feelings while we were studying for the exam, so I was going to just say goodbye." She laughed as she said it. She told me she doesn't mind that I was divorced. "Just because, James, you haven't done anything wrong, have you?" That's what she said. She understood the struggles I'd been through because she was in the same situation, and she reassured me by holding my hand. I said to her, "Thank you." Afterward, Emily and I started dating, and we eventually married, holding a modest ceremony. I, a former office worker who had quit his job and gone through a divorce, had finally seized happiness after much hardship. Emily and I completed a year of legal clerkship and landed jobs at different law firms. Despite our busy schedules, we were living fulfilling lives. Then, one day, something unusual happened. I was summoned by Rob, who was the boss of the firm. Was it possible that I, still a newcomer, had messed something up? While being nervous, I entered the Rob's office, where I was greeted with, "James, we've got an unexpected case. Have you ever handled a settlement for a traffic accident? The client has requested you as their attorney, so please take care of it." I was taken aback. It was unthinkable for me to be specifically requested since I don't have much experience yet. "Rob, may I see the client's name?" I was stunned into silence as I looked over the documents handed to me. To my surprise, the client was my ex-wife, Caroline. And what was even more unbelievable was the case itself. Caroline had been in an accident. Apparently, the car carrying Caroline and her affair partner collided with a drunk driver's vehicle. Caroline and that man were still an item, it seemed, though it looked like he had also gotten a divorce by then. While the affair partner sustained minor injuries, Caroline was seriously hurt. She had surgery at the hospital and continued treatment, but she was left with a disability in her leg. It sounded like she wouldn't be able to walk as before. Even with rehabilitation, it's still uncertain whether she'll be able to walk on her own. And the affair partner, a doctor, took no responsibility and started keeping his distance from Caroline. To make matters worse, the drunk driver's car was uninsured, not covered by liability or voluntary insurance. That's why Caroline, the victim, had to negotiate with the perpetrator. And she turned to our office for help. As I listened to Rob explain, I struggled to hide my astonishment and turmoil. I couldn't bring myself to forgive Caroline, who had cheated on me and left me with harsh words. I asked Rob to wait for a response and excused myself. Yet, I couldn't deny that another feeling was sprouting amidst the anger. It was gratitude towards Caroline, who had supported me for 3 years while I was a struggling student. Despite her own hardships, she supported me even financially as a wife. Now, when I was no longer useless, I felt I could repay the favor, so I decided to take on the role of her attorney. Later, Caroline came to my office. "James, I'm ashamed to look you in the face. The person I was back then was truly arrogant. I think it's come back to bite me, not just hurting you but his family as well. I know sorry doesn't cut it, but I am truly sorry. It was really tough, wasn't it? I've finally become a lawyer, and now I think it's my turn to give back to you. I'll put aside our past feelings and do my best as a lawyer to help you reintegrate into society." I did my utmost to encourage my client Caroline as her lawyer. It was both a way to repay and atone to my ex-wife, whom I couldn't protect before. It was a tough case, especially being an uninsured accident, but I managed to settle the negotiation between Caroline and the perpetrator. Of course, I also claimed damages from the affair partner. Caroline was forced into a long hospital stay, but I made sure she was compensated for the hospital bills and lost wages while she was out of work. Just like I had hit rock bottom once, Caroline now faced a significant adversity. But helping each other out as ex-spouses, I believe, will become a great asset in our lives moving forward. I could feel my resentment towards the old Caroline slowly clearing. And then, 6 months later, the cherry blossoms began to bloom and the cold winter was over. In this joyous season, painted pink everywhere, Caroline managed to return to work, walking with a cane after a hard rehabilitation. The day before her return to work, she visited my law office. "I really owe you a lot for this time. I'm going to try to live seriously again. I had completely forgotten why I wanted to become a doctor. You keep up the good work too, James, and be a good lawyer." With tears in her eyes, Caroline thanked me, and I truly felt blessed to be in the legal profession. Maybe if I had stayed an office worker, Caroline and I would never have parted ways. But it was through the experience of divorce that I was able to meet Emily, a strong partner. Life is really unpredictable. As I pondered these things, I watched Caroline leave, knowing we would probably never meet again. By helping my ex-wife Caroline return to work, I was able to let go of the regrets from our marriage. After the case wrapped up, I told everything to my wife, Emily. She was happy by hearing it. Later, after Emily went to work, I was cleaning the house. While cleaning around Emily's desk, the vacuum cleaner bumped into it and some documents fell to the floor. As I picked them up one by one, I was startled by one document in particular. It was Caroline's accident report. My eyes widened in shock. What on earth was this about? It was clearly the same document I had been given by Rob. My documents were in my office desk, so this wasn't mine. Curiosity got the better of me, and as soon as Emily returned home, I pressed her for an explanation. I'm sorry for keeping silent. The truth is, Caroline had first come to the law firm I work at to ask for help. It turns out that, by some coincidence, Caroline had initially sought to ask the law firm where Emily worked. In a strange twist of fate, Emily ended up being assigned to Caroline's case. But as she listened to the consultation, she realized that Caroline was the ex-wife I had divorced. She might have had a hunch from the name, but she decided to explain the situation honestly to Caroline. And then Emily, believing that I would surely resolve the issue, directed Caroline to my office. I'm really sorry for keeping this from you, but you did a great job, and Caroline was truly grateful for your help, Emily said with a gentle smile. I was deeply moved by her magnanimity and her continued kindness towards my ex-wife, Caroline. I've made many mistakes and faced many setbacks, but I vowed to myself to always protect the smile of the woman in front of me. And with that, I made a firm promise to myself.